Good morning, friends. Hi, how are you? For those of you new here, my name is Donna. So happy to have you here. So glad that you found me. If you are into color and sparkliness and grungy princess eye looks and just general makeup chatter, you have found the right place. I'm also like out here spreading the word for all of us ladies that might be being told that you can't wear that you can. You absolutely can, and here I am to prove it. You're in the right place. I hope that you'll want to stick around, and let's just get into what we're here for today. As you might have seen by the title and the thumbnail, I am here to talk to you about some of my favorite palettes for spring. So when you think of spring, what do you think of? I would be interested to know, because when I think of spring, I think of Easter. Easter eggs, flowers starting to bloom, maybe a little bit of pasteliness, and we all know I am not the seeker of a pastel makeup, but I do think of pastel more during this time of year than I do any other time of year, and I had some palettes that really screamed spring to me. And with that said, I do have 10 palettes that I have used personally in my collection that really remind me of spring, but I also have some bonus ones that are new to me or new-ish or ones I haven't used yet that I am making a promise to use this spring because they really just scream spring to me. So if that sounds like something that you'd be interested in watching, please stick around. Okay guys, so I have something from a myriad of price points here, and I think that we can find you something within your budget that is a great palette for spring. What I will say though is I think that there might be one or two of them that you can't get anymore, but I know the company makes them in singles or makes other palettes that you can also pick up within this same kind of color story. So let's start with these. So these are two of the Norvina Pro Pigment palettes that are minis, and these two really scream spring to me, and I think that you will see that they also scream spring. That's a hard one to say to you as well. These are the two palettes. So this one is the Pro Pigment Mini Volume 2 and this one is the Volume 1. So when I think of spring, just to like go back to what I was saying a few minutes ago, I think of like pastel in nature and like Easter eggy, flowers in bloom, that kind of thing. And I think that both of these like together scream volumes to what I just said. Like I think of this as the stems and the beautiful different like pastel-y oranges, and I think of this one as the colors of the flowers, right? So I think that these two palettes are also very pigmented. They're going to go a long way for you. You get a good bang for your buck, and they roughly are, I believe, $29 a piece. So that's not a bad price. You get 9 very nice shadows from the Norvina Pro Pigment series, but also like ABH. These are great palettes. You're gonna get a good bang for your buck in these palettes, and I think in conjunction these two could work quite well together. The next one is this, and this is the Sugarpill Fun Size Mini. This is a super fun palette, and I'm not even sure if this is available anymore, but look at these pastel shades. I typically, this doesn't even look like I've used it, but I promise you I have. I typically pull into this shadow palette to help me buff out. And that's one thing I would say too, is with all of these palettes, pretty much almost all of them are more companion pieces in my collection because I don't typically pull for pastels at all in a single solitary eye. But this is one of my favorite companion pieces for a spring eye look, just because of the sheer beauty of the pastels in this palette. They really do perform quite well. I mean, look at that pink. That is so pretty. And then that lavender, the yellow even in here is so pretty. And it just like reminds me right back to Easter. Like, tell me this doesn't look like Easter eggs. I definitely think it looks like Easter eggs. But this is a perfect little companion piece in my collection, and this guy is about $28 for 9 shadows, so a little bit more inexpensive than the Norvina palettes, but you're getting the same amount of shadows. I think these ones are a smidge bit bigger even, so there's that, and it's a great little pastel eyeshadow palette that is also super cute. Okay. One that also screams spring to me because of all the really pretty shimmers in here that work really well with a pastel eye look is this one here. This is the Tarte Make Believe in Yourself. I'm not sure that you can get this anymore, but these shimmers, this is a mostly shimmer palette. It just has the one matte, which is this guy here. All of these shimmers just partner so well in any eye look for a lid shade. These are so creamy and beautiful. They don't, you know, emphasize any kind of texture on the lid. So even with our mature eyelids out there, you will get a really pretty shimmery eyelid while using these shades. They're just super pretty, but also pretty muted so that they don't like scream, I'm wearing a pastel eye, but they do scream beauty. I mean, look how metallic that is. That is so pretty, right? But also so pastel. And really, I mean, it just goes back to me saying, like, I really feel like 'tis the season for pastel eye looks. It's very much a spring eye palette, in my opinion. The next one I have is this. This is the Violet Voss Fruit Sorbet, and this one is all about those colors only bright. So this is going to be kind of like spring sliding into summer kind of moment for you. I think that these bright tones are just this green here is, God, look at that green. It is so pretty and so springy. And while they look like super bright and in your face in the pan, I think that they all come together to perform very well in and of themselves in an eye look. And this palette, I feel like you could probably use, I know that you can because I did a palette roulette on this. I know that you can use this palette in and of itself and create many eye looks with this. It's got the mattes in the palette are very grounding mattes. So we have these three mattes here, this matte, and then this yellow is also a matte, and it's actually not a horrible yellow matte. Most yellow mattes are actually not great, but this one is good. This is Violet Voss. Violet Voss makes some really great eyeshadows. The formulation of the Violet Voss shadows is so impeccable. But I will say the little fun size minis are not my favorites of hers. The bigger pans are my favorites of hers. I just feel like there's a little something that is amiss between the bigger pans and the smaller pans, in my opinion. I don't know for sure that there's a formulation difference, but I feel like there is. I do like this one for the spring summertime because it's just so bright and brilliant, and the shimmers in it are so pretty. And again, this is a palette that if you use the shimmers in this palette, they don't exacerbate the texture in your eyes that make you look like you're older than you really are when you're using shimmers on your eye looks. I think that that is one thing that you will find is that the creamier the shimmer, the better it is for, you know, maybe aging eyes to find that it still looks good on their skin. The next one I have is also another one that you can't pick up, but it is by Colourpop, and it is one of, honestly, one of the first palettes that I had by Colourpop. And it is the My Little Pony palette. Like, I got this in BoxyCharm. I didn't even, like, seek this out. And when I first got it, I was like, I'm just not sure. This is the perfect spring eyeshadow palette. This purple here, again, rolls right into that lavender. It is a shimmer in the palette. It is a beautiful shimmer in the palette. This blue is probably my favorite. It's just a really pretty baby blue, but it's frosty and so gorgeous, and it has a little bit of a duochrome to it. I think that you can see that as I move my finger around. It slips from like blue to like almost like this white gold. It's so pretty, and it looks beautiful with this shade too. I wish I knew where the pictures, or had my pictures like marked, because I know I've had this in a palette roulette, but I will go ahead and link the palette roulette playlist down below. Most of these palettes I have done a palette roulette on, so you will be able to go on and see any eye looks that I've done with them. This is just a really pretty spring palette. It's got the beautiful oranges, it's got the muted pinks, it's got the lavender in it, some really pretty blues. I feel like this is spring in a palette. All right, the next one I have for you is by Beige Cosmetics. Beige Cosmetics is, you know, a really great price point. Them and Colourpop. Colourpop has a really decent price point as well. But Beige Cosmetics, I would say I like more than I like Colourpop. And that's saying a lot because Colourpop was one of the first brands that I actually got into when I first started doing makeup. This is the BH Cosmetics Weekend Festival palette. I got this in a BoxyCharm as well, but tell me these shades do not scream spring to you. Like, you've got these really pretty jewel tones up here and really pretty jewel tones there, and then it's sprinkled in with these beautiful pastel-y colors that I just think are stunning. This purple, I keep pulling for the purples in the palettes, but look at how beautiful that is. I also really like this blue if you're into blue. It's also got a little bit of a sheeniness to it, but it works perfectly also in a crease. This pink here is one of the prettiest like bubblegum pinks I have in my collection. It blends so beautifully, looks so good on the skin, and it really just has that color story that screams spring to me, but also has the deepening up moment. So like this purple you could deepen up in the eye look with, this brown and this brown you could deepen up in the eye look with. So this would be a perfect like springtime one and done kind of palette because it's got a little bit of everything in it, and its price point, or when I purchased it or when I got it in BoxyCharm, I think its price point was something like $18. It's not bad. I don't know that you can pick up this palette anymore, but I do know that BH Cosmetics has several palettes that you can pick up right now. And what I would say is they're like food ones or weekend away palettes. Their travel series has this color story to some extent over and over again in their palettes. Like even like when I think of like even their avocado toast or their blueberry muffin palette, I think their avocado toast palette, which I have, could be a really nice spring palette too because it's got some beautiful greens. So the next one that I have to talk about is this one here. This is the Juvia's Place Deuce palette. You guys, this one is probably the springest palette I have. It looks so much like Easter eggs. I just don't even, I can't. This green is such a beautiful green that is so pretty and minty. I haven't tried the e.l.f. mint collection yet, but most of it is because I have that mint in my collection right there. I don't need the e.l.f. one. This one is also super pretty. That is a beautiful like bubblegum pink shimmer. This is also a beautiful bubblegum pink too. It just all like goes together so well. This is a like a really coral color, even though it looks kind of almost brown in the pan or darker in the pan, but you also have a nice deepening up tone as well. So this would make a perfect also one and done kind of spring eye look palette. I feel like I can get more out of this palette than it appears with 9 pans, right? And then the last two that I have here are a little higher price point. One's higher than the other, obviously, but this is the Sigma Enchanted. This one I think is $49, and this one I just got into my collection 8-ish months ago. I did do a palette roulette on this, and I remember in that palette roulette thinking, well, this is a lot lighter color story than I thought it was initially when looking at it. When looking at it, I really thought it was going to be really dark and grungy, but it turns out most of the palette is actually very spring-esque. I would say this beautiful like duochrome is very spring. I don't know if you guys can see that. It leans a little bit green. This green also very spring. I think it could be like very grungy. I got it grungy, but I think it more leans spring. Like from here down, it's very springy in tone. It's just very pink, very pastel-y, very pretty. As a matter of fact, I didn't have a whole lot of fun with this palette through my palette roulette review because it was so pastel-y, and I'm just it's more of a companion piece for me at that point than it is anything else, but there are 14 shades in here, so I just didn't have as much fun with it as I thought I was going to, because when I first looked at it, I thought it was more grungy. But it's definitely more spring, in my opinion. The last one that I have to talk about that I have used that I also think is a palette in my collection that is very spring-like is this one here. And this is the Natasha Denona Trio Chrome. My partner got me this for Christmas, and I do think that Natasha Denona shadows are a lot more pigmented than you think that they're going to be. So even with as pastel as this looks, you can get a really deep eye look out of this palette. But these are the tones of that, and just looking at it, it definitely reminds me of spring, which is odd to me because this was her holiday palette. This was her Christmas launch. This launched in what, November? So it's very strange to me to be populating this into a spring palette choices, but this really screams spring. All of these muted, like pastel-y in tone shades in here really go well together, and you can create like an exponential amount of eye looks with this. It very much leans pastel in spring. This is the most expensive palette of the palettes that I've shown you. This is a $129 eyeshadow palette, but I do think that I was able to like come up with quite a few palettes within a multitude of price ranges, and I think there's only maybe 3 of them that you can't get anymore. 4. So these 4, I don't know that you can get them anymore. I know that with Sugarpill, you can't maybe get this one anymore, but you can get their Sugarpill capsule palettes that remind me a lot of this one too. They just have a little bit more color story in them. And specifically, this one is the pink edition, and you can get it from Beautylish still, and that one is $42. And that one actually has more shades in it. Quite a few more shades in it, honestly. And then as far as BH Cosmetics Weekend Festival palette goes, they don't really have that palette anymore, but they do have quite a few. As a matter of fact, one of the ones that they just launched is the Flower Power one. This is a beautiful shadow palette. It's so pretty. It's got the purples and the bright pinks in it that this one does, and it also has some of the darker, like the browns in it. So I think that that would be a good compensatory palette to this one from the BH Cosmetics line. This one you can't pick up anymore. I'm not sure, honestly, what could be its like compensatory piece, but I do know that you can pick this up on like Mercari, Poshmark, those kind of places. A lot of people got this palette and really didn't like it. Mine looks completely unused, but I have used it actually quite a bit. Okay, so with that said, I do also have 3 palettes that I want to share with you that are in my collection that I haven't used yet, that I think also, when going through my collection, screamed spring to me. And I do believe that you can still pick up all these palettes, but this one is the Colourpop Garden Variety palette. I mean, just the external portions of this palette, so the packaging and whatnot, they look very spring, right? We've got succulents, we've got pinks and purples and all that great stuff. What I would say is that the inside of the palette doesn't remind me so much of the external parts of the palette, but this definitely screams spring to me. It's a palette I haven't used yet, so I will be pulling for this spring. Maybe it'll show up in my Shop My Stash. So another one that is kind of new to my collection and I haven't used yet, I got an IPSY, and it is the Iby Beauty Enlightened palette. I don't know much about Iby Beauty, so if you know anything about Iby, let me know. But when I opened this palette up, I thought, oh my gosh, this looks like Easter in a palette. So you do have some browns and you have some really muted tones here in the center, but these 2 rows here just scream spring to me. This pink is so pretty. This like lime green, yes, please get that on my eyeballs. That periwinkle I'm interested to see because there's not very many people that can do a good periwinkle. I would say even ABH, their periwinkle in that Norvina palette is not a great periwinkle, if I'm honest. I am anxious to try that guy out. And then the last palette that I had to share with you that I will be pulling for this spring, because when I opened it up, I was like, oh my God, this is such a spring palette, is this one by Kaleidos, and it is the Escape Pod. So Kaleidos is also a new brand to me, so I'm just excited because it's a new brand to me as well. But this is what this palette looks like. Tell me that doesn't look like spring. That definitely looks like spring, right? We've got some bright tones here. We've got all shimmers here in the center. We've got some browns. We've got a peach. We've got beautiful spring pastel-y looking eye looks. These are super bright. There's another periwinkle right there. I know it looks blue to you, but it's very much a periwinkle shade in my opinion. I think that what this lacks is some of those lighter like tones to go with these bright ones here, and then this would just perfectly pair with those. Doesn't that perfectly pair? Like, I think that this will make a great combination for spring. So I will be pulling for the garden variety, the Enlightened palette by IPSY, and this Kaleidos Cosmetics Escape Pod palette this spring, because they are palettes in my collection that I have not utilized yet that scream spring to me. And I would be really interested to hear what palettes you're going to be pulling for spring. Do you look at your palette collection and say, these palettes are more for fall, and these palettes are more for spring? Do you go through that in your palette collection, or is that just something that we do here in YouTube? Because I've seen a lot of people do their top 10 palettes for spring, and I promise you I had this recorded so many moons ago, and then for whatever reason I deleted a whole card full of videos. So this one was one I was trying to pull together again. It's one I can remember what I had chosen. The other three videos I think I had an empties on there. I'm not really even sure, but I would be interested to know what you guys are pulling for your spring eye looks, and if you even look at your palette structure in that fashion, or if that's just something that we here do in the YouTube community. And with that being said, that's all I have for you guys today. I do hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope that you're considering giving it a big thumbs up if you did. I also hope that you're considering subscribing to my channel if you're new here. I would love to have you along for this crazy ride of mine and welcome you into my YouTube family. I am so happy to have you here and just want to continue to see your face. If you're interested in seeing another video from me, YouTube will be suggesting one here in a second. And with that said, yeah, you guys, that's it. That's all I got for you. Just be safe out there, cookies. Stay healthy. Love each other, but love each other from afar. And until next time, bye, friends.